I'm Miss Durso, and the unit that I've been working on is based on Pioneer and Prairie life. My unit title is Early Pioneer Life and Westward Expansion. The lesson I will be teaching is a third grade economics lesson titled Packing for the Prairie, Pioneer Economics and Survival. So first I'm going to go around to my students and ask, how did pioneers meet their basic needs without modern resources? Turn and talk with your table members or just a partner and discuss this question. I'll give you a few minutes and then we'll group back as a class and discuss. Okay. How did pioneers meet their basic needs without modern resources? Pioneers met their basic needs through extreme self-sufficiency, using tools like knives and flint and steel for survival tasks. They built shelters from natural resources, hunted and gathered food, and farmed to produce crops and raise livestock for sustenance. Essential skills included hunting, trapping, and foraging. For example, such as building shelter, their house was a log cabin, so it was made of log. Okay, now we're going to discuss and create this T-chart together as a class, the needs and wants of what we can bring with us if we were pioneers traveling. So needs versus wants. So here are a few examples. Food is a need, but toys is a want. Tools is a need, and fancy clothes are a want. Yes, we need clothes, but do they have to be fancy? No. And sure, we want toys, but that's not a necessity. It's not something we need to survive. Whereas food, we need that to survive. Tools, such as a axe or gun for shooting and hunting animals, that's all necessary so that we can survive. We shoot animals so we can eat. We would cook them on a little open fire. We would park our wagon for a bit until morning, and we would cook our food and eat. You might want a fishing rod to go fishing if you come across a body of water, and you would catch some fish. You would cook them over your open fire. Yes, you need clothes. Yes, you need food. You need tools. You need animals, livestock. Those are all examples of needs versus wants. Then there's our transportation. Typically, for a long travel, which is what we are discussing, you would be in a prairie wagon. It takes about 2,000 pounds of weight in it. That includes you and your family. And it's usually driven by a team of horses or mules or even oxen. And yeah, if you are traveling on the side, you might just ride a horse. But usually you will be in a prairie wagon. The nice thing, if it's cold, you can put the cover over it. If it's a warm day, you can undo the cover, whether just a little bit, or you could take the top off. Like the first picture, the one in color shows, in the very front, the top is off. And yeah. In the black and white picture, you see people just riding horses, but you do also see, for the most part, that they are in their prairie wagons, driven by horses. Now we're going to brainstorm. What items do you think are the most important for survival? So I want you to turn and talk with your partner or as a group and discuss. Or just think quietly to yourself. Either is okay. So we'll give it a few minutes. All right, start finishing up and keep those in mind for when I put you in groups for your activity. So your activity, I'm going to read off something from a website first. Okay. So this is learning about the supplies used by settlers on the Oregon Trail. And it can give you a better appreciation for their Spartan lives. And really, could you survive with the supplies used by settlers on the Oregon Trail? Want to go camping? Well, before you go, it's important to do some planning to make sure you'll bring all you need. These days, it seems more and more like people are taking everything but the kitchen sink when they head to their favorite camping spot. Games, tents, chairs, coolers, electronics, heck, even extra vehicles make the trip. We fill cars, pickups, RVs, and trailers with our stuff to make even a simple weekend trip to the lake. It almost makes you wonder if people even know how to get by with less these days. Well, just like we have to plan for our camping trips, settlers on the Oregon Trail had to get their outfits organized before embarking on their great adventure. However, rather than having the luxury of running to the nearest supermarket or gas station, if they forgot something, pioneers had to try and bring everything along from the very start. Planning for this would have been a huge challenge. Their journey was nearly 2,000 miles. It took nearly 6 months to complete, and they had to pack everything they needed in a wagon that was only 4 feet wide by 10 feet long. Finally, add to that the final challenge that all of your gear had to be pulled along by oxen, mules, or less likely, horses the entire way. If you loaded it too heavy, the animals would give out and you'd be stranded in the wilderness. Needless to say, pioneers had to make difficult decisions about what to bring. So what supplies were used by settlers on the Oregon Trail? Well, this website will show you a brief overview of supplies that they may have taken on their long trip to Oregon. And as you read, you'll want to keep in mind that pioneers generally tried to keep their loads around 2,000 pounds overall. So this talks about food, the different types of food you would want with you. The food had to provide enough energy to keep you going for the demands of a 15 miles walk and all the energy you spent dealing with your animals. So again, these are some of the examples of food. And And if you read through the entire list, you could see that flour, bacon, and coffee were the real staples of a pioneer's diet. And together they met all the requirements food needed on the trail. Another item would be wagon parts. Unfortunately, just like cars these days, wagons broke down. Over time, wheels would get roughed up, and you might need a new wheel. If a spoke on a wheel broke, you would need a new one. Maybe not a whole new wheel, but you would need some sort of wooden stick to poke through and stay long enough to get you through your trip for the wheel. For cooking, you would need a giant cast iron cookware set. But it's heavy. It's great for cooking, but it's really heavy. So things like skillets, Dutch ovens, boilers, they would have been common. And as heavy as they may be, cast iron is rugged, tough, and would have been perfect for the hard use the cookware would have seen on the trail. And you would need all that so that you could prepare your food. Then there's firearms. Most wagon trails on the Oregon Trail would have carried at least a few firearms. So you would need a rifle or a gun of some sort, and you would need to make sure you had gunpowder and lead for shooting. Why? Because back then you're going shooting for your food. You're going hunting. It's how you would survive that long, 6 months in a wagon. For your journey, you would need to go hunting. You would go into the woods, you would go find a deer, a bear, all sorts of things. Turkey, whatever you could find, you'll need that to survive. You would also need clothing, of course. And clothing in the 19th century was simply different than the clothes we wear today. Our clothes now are pretty light, right? But back then, it was heavier, not as comfortable, and made of completely natural materials. And pioneers also didn't have nearly as many changes of clothes as most people have today. And according to this website, generally speaking, on the trail, pioneers brought along perhaps 3 changes of clothes per person, which is a little crazy to think about, but that's how it was for them back then. And these were the only clothes that they had for days, nights, and no matter the weather, hot, cold, rainy, windy, and difficult conditions on the trail. Then there's home building. You need materials to build a home. You would need to find logs. You would need twine or rope so that you could keep it stable and whatnot. You would need, say, some different tools to help build your new house, which was typically a log cabin back then. Unless you were making a little more money and then maybe you own a more sturdy house. But that's more in the towns. If we're thinking fully on the prairie, you're in a log cabin. All right, now for your activity. You will plan what to pack for your wagon trip, but your budget is limited to $200. I will be providing you with a digital Google Sheets list of some common items you would need on your trip. And I will have the prices that they typically were back then. And it'll be interesting for you to see as well, comparing the prices for items back then compared to what they are now. And you may think that your budget, limiting it to $200, that's so little. That was a lot of money for them back then. So you will be working in groups of 3 or 4. You'll select your items that you'll be packing on your wagon while staying within the budget. You're going to justify your choices in a reason column. For example, we chose flour because it's needed for food. And then you'll identify at least 2 trade-offs, items that you wanted but couldn't afford or fit. So here is your digital list. You would actually be provided access to the Google Sheet, but for the sake of the slides, there's just screenshots. So I have your food and essentials, your tools, your supplies, your livestock, your wagon items, and toys and personal. And for the sake of learning experience, you will already have your whole wagon. But I did write down that the price was $100 for the wagon. This is just an example of how much it would cost if you didn't already have it. And explaining the water barrel, typically back in the Prairie days, families would bring an empty barrel with them or already filled up with water, and as they run out, as they go along their journey, when they find a riverbank or a lake or a creek, they're taking their barrel and filling it up down there. So that would be a free resource for you. So while you are working on your activity, I will be circulating around the room, engaging with the different groups, asking guiding questions, such as, how are you deciding what's most important? What trade-offs are you making? What might happen if you left out this item versus this item? And then if you are an early finisher, you can compare your packing list with another early finishing group and debate whose plan would help the family survive longer. Then, once we're all done, I will have each group present. You're going to present your final packing list to the class, explaining your choices and trade-offs. And through this, I will facilitate the following discussion questions. Which items were most commonly chosen? What surprised you about what you could or could not bring? And how did scarcity affect your decisions? And then after all the presentations are complete, the students will, all of you will complete an exit ticket or a short reflection, filling in this sentence. If I were a pioneer, one trade-off I'd make is blank because blank. And yes, you've already discussed your trade-offs in your group project, but that was as a group. Now I want to hear your individual responses. And once you're done, your project will either be submitted digitally or printed for display, whichever you decide. All right, that is it. Thank you for listening to my lesson.